Welcome back. I'm Kimberly. She's Fuliana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec. As you know, Fuliana is travelling the world at the moment, so we are joined by Jamie Wadley to help co-host this conversation we're having with Oscar Trimboli. In this second session, Oscar is talking to us about asking the right questions before, during and after meetings, whether they're geographically remote or not, as well as a very interesting question at the end of the conversation about whether we are solving the wrong problems in our meetings.
We'll move on to our second question that we sent Oscar. How does deep listening impact decision-making at the executive level, particularly when managing large, geographically diverse teams? And there was another part to that, but I know I'm not supposed to ask two-part questions, so I won't.
Well, ask the two-part question and then we'll deconstruct why two-part questions are difficult.
I guess our listening audience is very geographically diverse. And for some of them, they just manage in crisis mode the whole time. And we know that that's a fact because of the feedback we get. Two separate groups, obviously. The geographically diverse, increasingly important in our listening audience because they're managing teams that are silos in some cases, but multidisciplinary in other cases. And there's been a change in that environment as well. What they are asking us is that we grew up, we came through the ranks learning this management style, and now the ground that under which we manage has changed significantly in the last 5 years or so. What applies and what doesn't in today's environment of managing teams particularly.
So the first thing to think about when it comes to listening is listening happens before, during and after the conversation. And a lot of us don't think of everything that happens before the conversation and after the conversation. So particularly when we're thinking about remote teams, a lot of thought around comms goes into the synchronous conversation. What happens when we're in comms real time versus asynchronous? When we're on different times and we're using technologies, plural, could be anything, could be phone, could be Slack, could be WhatsApp, could be Teams. There's so many of them. Sorry, I used to sell them at Microsoft. I'm probably responsible for a lot of this, is to have a plan for before and after, not just in the conversation, and have a plan for synchronous and asynchronous comms. If you're doing the regular one-on-one versus the crisis comms, let's unpick those. I want to give you one question for each of those that I think, based on our research and what we get feedback from people on, is really powerful. Number one, before the meeting, ask a simple question on whatever technology platform you choose. What will make this a good conversation? It's important to say what would make this a good conversation, not what would make this a good conversation for you. We're actually not interested in what will make it a good conversation for them, because when we come together, there's the speaker, the listener, and the conversation. When we're listening for the conversation, not just for the speaker. So what will make this a good conversation? This does a few things. Number one, gets them to think about the meeting before the meeting. So this is a naughty way to get their subconscious processing before the conversation takes place. They won't even know, but they're thinking about that meeting before they arrive. What that means is their subconscious has started to process some things. So some of their ideas are more fully formed when they come to the meeting together. So what will make it a good conversation is a really powerful tool. Similarly, in group meetings, you want to ask each individual participant that question in the meeting. So in group meetings for remote teams, make sure you go around really quickly in one sentence, what will make this a great conversation? What will make this a great meeting? Why? Good leaders get everybody to listen to the active speaker. Great leaders get everybody to listen to each other. And it also provides an anchor for people who get bored and distracted and want to anticipate and solve to start to listen from slightly different perspectives when other people are speaking. Finally, after the meeting, please make sure that the actions are collected and confirmed during the meeting, not at the end of the meeting. and communicate consistently after the fact the actions you're taking and what other team members are taking as well. Now, ironically, these principles are identical whether you're face-to-face or remote.
Yeah.
They don't change. The foundational principles are independent of technologies. So when it comes to listening in remote environments, make sure that you have a very clear understanding of what you're doing before the meeting, what you're doing after the meeting. Back to that one-on-one example, when you arrive at the meeting, show that you've listened, because when they respond and say X would make it a good conversation through the technology, you say, hey, Jamie, you mentioned last week that this would make it a good conversation. Is that still what will make it a good conversation? Because something may have changed in between. It signals to them that you heard them, and it signals to them there's an ability to adjust as well. So that's for the set piece meetings. For the crisis meetings, we just need to adjust that question slightly differently. What would success in this meeting be for you, as opposed to what will make it a good conversation? First one's a process, second one's an outcome. Second one, our time frame is tighter and we need to be making progress. That question is going to dial everyone into not what's the problem, what does success look like when we exit this meeting? Yeah. So they're my tips.
Beautiful. And I think it will resonate with the listeners, because that's very much a question that came from them when we started to talk about you being on the show. And that was an issue I know is an ongoing issue for many of them, that they've taken on this role of the geographically diverse teams and how they bring them together. So thank you for that.
And postscript, please make sure you have a protocol that everybody's agreed to in the system. Like, are you expected to respond to emails within 24 hours? How does that even work? What happens if you're on non-email systems like a Slack or a Teams? What's the expectation there? You need to make that explicit so that everybody's clear and expectations can be set and exceptions can be made. Without that dialogue, you get a lot of frustration and a lot of undercurrent of negative and poor culture. Never responds to email. Well, they do eventually, just not in the time frame you expected. But because you haven't had that discussion, it creates a lot more friction in remote environments.
Third question that we sent you is, many executives are trained to be fast problem solvers. How can they balance the need for speed with the patience that deep listening requires? So we've touched on it briefly.
Yeah, and deep listening doesn't require patience. Deep listening is not therapy. Deep listening is not a psychiatrist's couch. People confuse deep listening with other modalities. If you're doing therapeutic listening in the workplace, you're not doing the right kind of listening. The listening I'm talking about is commercial listening. And commercial listening, and the promise we make to our clients, you're going to have fewer meetings, and the meetings you have are shorter. So back to the question is, when we think about problem solving, my invitation is simply this: great that you're problem solving. Are you solving the problem that's in front of you, or are you connecting systemic dots? Are you connecting systemic processes together to ensure that you're just not solving the problem today for one customer and tomorrow you get the identical problem with another customer? Are you solving the problem as it relates to our safety audit, and then next month we have another incident because we didn't listen more broadly? One of the things we talk about is, do you have a listening compass? A listening compass implies that most people listen for the similar and rarely listen for the different. Most conversations travel in the identical direction, north-south. We're just going in the same direction. There's momentum behind it. And the problem we solve, we feel really good, and it's done. And the problem emerges 2 weeks later in a different way. One of the things leaders need to get much better at is practicing their east-west orientation. This is listening for different. This is listening externally. This is listening beyond the current time horizons. So those three things are really critical: difference, direction, and time horizon. One of the things we often do when we're in this problem-solving mode is immediacy. Well, what does this mean in 3 and 5 years? Well, in 3 and 5 years, it probably has some implications for the kind of systems we work with, the kind of pricing we charge, the kind of cost base we have in place. We probably need to think about that as well. So ask questions about difference more when we're in that fixer mode rather than asking problem-solving questions. So as much as we love Six Sigma root cause analysis, it's obsessively focused on problem solving rather than understanding the implications of that and its connectedness to other systems. So be careful with your language around problem solving and just adjust it very quickly to go, what does this mean for a customer? What does this mean for a supplier, as a way to test difference rather than similarity. When you're inside the system, you're going to ask a lot of questions with confirmation bias that confirms our approach to solving this and just go really, really fast at solving the wrong problem.
Some food for thought there for you before we join Oscar and Jamie for our final session, our final part of the conversation. For now, I'm Kim Bailey, she's Fuliana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec.